Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Our today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Our today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinga, Nagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinga Nagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैथ से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए JSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। JSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
JSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा, और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार JSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। JSW पेंट्स, थिंक ब्यूटीफुल।
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Our today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Our today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinga, Nagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinga Nagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट। मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW नियो स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW नियो स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा, और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार JSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। JSW पेंट्स, थिंक ब्यूटीफुल।
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Our today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Our today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinga, Nagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinga Nagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट। मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW नियो स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW नियो स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला।
is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसी
कर दिया लाइव, आया नहीं अभी तक। We are live now. We can go ahead.
Thank you, Sujit. Sri Ravindra, DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, Mr. Ganesh Badunabhan, Beyond Mines, USA, Dr. Saurabh Misra, Chayo and Stanford University, USA, Dr. Gunjan Bharadwaj, Innoplexis AG, Germany, Mr. Rainer Bram, Siemens Factory Automation, Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and a warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, guests, and delegates who are joining us today for the third day of the Partnership Summit 2020. This is a session on Advent of AI, the future of manufacturing. There are numerous people who are joining us across the globe. On behalf of CII and on my own personal behalf, may I extend a very special welcome to our esteemed panelists and thank them for taking their time off from their busy schedules to participate in this session. I would like to specifically extend a special warm welcome to our guest, Sri Ravindra, Joint Secretary, DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, for participating in this session. The never-seen before level of disruption faced by the global supply chains makes Industry 4.0 far more relevant in the post-COVID-19 emergency. The manufacturing sector plays a key role in the economic development of a country, as reflected in the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Make in India and of becoming a $5 trillion economy with a contribution of $1 trillion by the manufacturing sector alone by 2035. To realize this vision, the use of emerging technologies like AI and Industry 4.0 becomes imperative given the cost and quality benefits it offers. Quite often we discuss with the DPIIT Ministry of Commerce itself that we do not have scale, our cost of capital is high, we do not have time, therefore how do we compete and become globally competitive? The solution lies in this session and I look forward to the panelists to prescribe the same. Emerging technologies and Industry 4.0 is transforming the manufacturing sector in many ways. It is calling into question the very definition of manufacturing, as it is blurring the lines between tangibles and intangibles, digital and physical, product and service. At its core, it is redefining how manufacturers derive and deliver value. And as manufacturing is digitized, a whole new universe of production data opens up endless possibilities for monetization, new services, platforms, and payment models. Here again, we had seen for Industry 4.0 to be complete, many of us have made a beginning. It has to be complete, and also it has to discover new revenue models. That is where we are. The Government of India has taken several initiatives to promote a healthy environment for the growth of the manufacturing sector in the country. Some of the notable initiatives and developments are approved the production in linked incentive scheme or the PLI, it is known for the large-scale electronics manufacturing to boost domestic manufacturing and attract investments. Right now, they are working on similar scheme for the food processing sector, and I belong to the air conditioning industry. The ministry is working on a production-linked incentive scheme for air conditioners as well. The Government of India think tank Niti Aayog has pitched India as an AI garage and identified 5 focus areas that include manufacturing. With the Honorable Prime Minister's recent vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, or the self-reliant India, the government's focus on inclusive growth, robust policies, private-public sector partnership models, India is indeed suited to lead the AI for all movement with a noble and social focus addressing challenges to realize the foundational components that could make AI inclusive for all. CII itself stands for inclusive growth. The Government of India's Union Budget 2020 was built on the bedrock of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence initiatives, such as building data center parks across India, aiming to safeguard data, the most critical asset of the manufacturing firms, along with the digitization of 100,000 Gram Panchayats through its BharatNet initiative, which will strengthen the digital fabric of the country, help the manufacturing sector in a big way. Also, the digitization and the AI initiatives are being extended to agricultural and food processing sector as well. CII strongly believes that it is imperative to put concentrated efforts to help the industry for adopting technology like AI in manufacturing with ease. CII, in partnership with industry and academia, is conducting capacity building programs and awareness sessions to help building the manufacturing sector. It is also important for us to keep extending the knowledge sharing platforms to many of them. Collaboration between industry and academia in bringing the skill development gaps, what has been done already in this regard also will be shared in this panel. With those introductory remarks, let me first invite Shri Ravindra, Joint Secretary, DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, for his address to understand the government's views and initiatives that how manufacturing sector can be benefited using technology like AI and through various initiatives of the Government of India. Thank you, Mr. Shri Ravindra. Over to you.
Thank you, Tyagarajan ji. I will first like to thank CII for inviting me to this session. And as Mr. Tyagarajan said, he is not an expert in the field. I am also not an expert in the field. But I had the chance to convene the task force on AI, which DPIIT formed sometime in August 2017, which gave its report in March 2018. And then since for industry, this is a very important and new emerging sector, we keep interacting with them. Though Niti Aayog and MIT are the main government units identified to handle this issue. When we look at these new emerging technologies, obviously a number of words come and are being used very repeatedly: artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things. So I was thinking that considering the kind of panelists we have, it will be more on the manufacturing related issues and Industry 4.0 and Internet of Things. But yes, data is a very important topic. And since I handle e-commerce policy, that becomes a very important aspect on which we are currently working. So, and when we see all these areas, one important aspect which comes to immediately to our mind is the issue of automation versus employment. And for government, this is a big challenge.
We lost him, I think. Shri Ravinder, if you can put your video off, you may get a better bandwidth, I think.
Should we tell him to continue?
We have lost him, I think.
I'm just checking with him, Chairman, on phone.
We will proceed and he can join.
Yeah, can we move on to next speaker? I think he's
Yeah,
on
I would invite Mr. Ganesh Badmanabhan, who is Vice President, Worldwide Business Development and Partnerships, Beyond Minds, United States of America. Thank you for joining us, sir. That we, as you may notice, Mr. Ravinder was trying to get to the core of the issue that in a country where you have the employment issue to be tackled, and he was touching upon, and I suppose that's where when he joins back, he will tell us more about it. What are his concerns? But equally, our membership, quite often this is being discussed, that what is the interplay of AI across the native products, namely finance, insurance, Industry 4.0, and within government? What future do you see for AI in Industry 4.0 and its impact on building the future of manufacturing while fulfilling the social objectives? And in a country specifically where the cost of capital is very high. And my own experience is that IT gets outdated very fast, that you have to keep on investing. And some extent, on the lighter sense, it is also oversold and the over marketed. And which are the focus areas where the US government is using AI? What India can learn while keeping its own priorities on track? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Tyagarajan. I'm assuming you all can see my screen.
Yes, please.
Hold on one second. Okay. We're sharing live. It's okay. All right. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you CII for inviting me. And it's an absolute pleasure being here and sharing my thoughts and participating in this discussion. So what I thought I'll do in the opening remarks was take a step back and talk a little bit about contextualizing the notion of artificial intelligence and AI within manufacturing, and then touch upon some of those issues and have a quick set of thoughts around how does that impact the industry 4.0, the interplay across the society, governance, and individuals per se. And then during the Q&A time, we can go and go deeper into a lot of those topics as well. So first off, I want to say that AI is probably, well, not necessarily probably, is the single largest commercial opportunity for any organization, any enterprise, any government, any country of a lifetime. And this chart from PwC talks about the impact to GDP, close to 16 trillion in GDP improvements in US dollars by 2030. And a lot of that is going to come from the labor productivity improvements that happens across the value chain, across industries where human capital is now being more augmented with automation and innovation to make them do things faster, better, and cheaper. On the other hand, there is also the gains that's going to come from the consumption side impacts, new products, new time saved, new quality of services, opening up the creativity spectrum for human beings to go participate in entrepreneurship and value creation. And the entire opportunity across the AI landscape is pretty huge, and that's why we're here, we're talking about it. But the reality is, and there's always this question is, and Sri Ravinder actually talked about it, saying there's a lot of words being thrown around. So the fundamental question, I'll take a moment to talk about what is AI and how I view it from as an AI. So there is a lot of words, techniques, these are all different methods within the spectrum of artificial intelligence that is used to describe it. Machine learning, robotics, neural networks, cognitive system, perception, natural language processing. You can go, we can play, in America, we play bingo with these words. Every time somebody says it, you mark a check. So the idea here is the way to understand AI is look at this entire spectrum of, man versus machine to man and machine put together, right? On one end, it's all automation. Take all the tasks that you actually do as human beings do and automate it through software. And then on the other hand, it's actually how do you augment the human being in the loop to do better things in a more efficient, more productive manner. And that's where this entire spectrum of artificial intelligence. And on one hand, as you can imagine, is the labor impact that is happening. On the other hand, there's productivity improvement and stuff too. And these are just two sides of the same coin. To define artificial intelligence, the simplest way to think about it is, mimicking human cognitive functions through software, whether it's the act of sensing through hearing something, listening to something, seeing something, to turn that into a software code that'll actually do that for the human being, or the act of thinking or the cognitive function of acting, just automation. So that's a broad way to think about it. But in the whole spectrum of digital technologies and innovation that have happened, what really distinguishes AI from previous software development is the fact that it is a paradigm shift. From earlier, it was actually software was written as a set of rules that you actually code in through, hey, if this happens, do something else. And it was left to automate different tasks. With AI, we introduce the paradigm of learning or self-learning, right? It is the act of learning. You build an algorithm that will learn from the data that is actually there and the output and the results that happened when those data was input in the past, and use that to build a learning system that will constantly learn and evolve. And as a result of this you're getting a lot more improvements in outcomes when you use AI and machine learning compared to traditional software or rule-based systems. So that is an important thing to understand. And the ultimate power, and this is what gets me excited every day to think about it. And I've been a technologist all my life. I grew up in Kerala, studied engineering, went into software development. And I think I have found my calling with AI as a technology domain, which I'm associated with for the last almost a decade, all the way from big data analytics to machine learning across data and companies that I founded and helped start around data and artificial intelligence, to my current company, Beyond Minds, which is helping organizations and enterprises globally to really leapfrog the AI revolution by building AI systems as a service that they can use. And the fundamental notion here that's extremely empowering and extremely impactful for humanity in general is the act of pairing humans and machines. And in this case, it's algorithms, robotics, machine learning, and so forth together. And the reference on the picture here is, Iron Man. If you're used to the Marvel comic character, Iron Man itself is when Tony Stark takes on the robotic systems, the ability to process data and have a view of what is happening, has an exoskeleton built by machines, he becomes a superhuman. And that is the power of AI for general humanity. Coming into manufacturing, and before we go dive into manufacturing, the COVID-19 crisis definitely accelerated a shift, and the impact of AI is very relevant in a lot of cases that we have seen already, right? The new reality has fundamentally changed the dynamics of how a business operates and what they need to do to win, and AI can really help. The whole field of AI and products and capabilities can help tremendously. I mean, some of the examples, everything from everybody going consumers, the stores being hard to get to, and with shutdowns and happening in all cities around the world, e-commerce consumption of digital goods and digital channels consumption completely went off the roof. And for organizations of all sizes, using AI and the power of not just a website and a payment system, but the ability to actually understand these consumption patterns, personalize the engagement with the customers, and delivering products, as the demand stuff was a huge differentiators for companies and organizations that really embraced AI and delivered value. The remote working is here to say. We are having this wonderful event completely remote and live streams across the world. I was worried about competing with the primetime TV watching audiences, but I'm told there are so many people watching this at this time. But this actually drives a different behavior in the labor community, in the consumption patterns, in the way employees operate and work within an enterprise. And AI has equipped a lot of companies to understand these dynamics, to really more precisely predict labor needs as well as supplier and demand needs, and react very quickly. So if anything, COVID-19 really acted as an accelerator to driving AI to make an impact. My last two points of view here is AI in manufacturing, and I'll give you 3 very quick examples to understand this. It's got unlimited potential. So, and there are so many different things you can do, but it can broadly be categorized as something that in these 3 buckets, right? Augmenting human workers to improve their productivity. If you take an example of an assembly line and there is a defect detection, quality testing process in a PCB line, that humans are actually looking at it and looking for defects within the PCB boards, that process can be dramatically and drastically improved with computer vision that allows you to actually detect these changes in pixels and pictures at a much more granular level than the human worker who's working on it can dramatically improve their productivity. We talked a little bit about cost of capital in manufacturing. If you really think about how expensive physical assets are managed and maintained, it is based on a scheduled maintenance business model, right? You actually set the times every quarter, every month, every week. You actually perform maintenance actions on the machines because these are expensive material, equipment, and you don't want to actually get into a downtime scenario. Well, with AI, you can move away from that to more a predictive maintenance process where you really watch and look at the data coming out of the sensors to predict when a failure will happen and then take care of the issue, when as and when it happens, rather than spending capital on actually doing it in a scheduled maintenance process. And then lastly, predicting and forecasting demand and supply. When the COVID-19 crisis hit in January, General Motors in the United States went from 0 to turning the entire assembly line to producing PPE equipment and ventilators, and produced up to 50,000 PPE equipment a day in a matter of weeks, right? From the start, they say, let's actually reorient our demand pattern is changing for what we otherwise do, what is the need of the hour. But the ability to actually resurrect and re-engineer their production process to support something like that was a huge benefit to society as a whole. But that is the power of actually using technologies like AI in manufacturing. And then the other side, the impact of this, to think about it, is there is the technology adoption and investment.
Conclude your remarks, please.
Say that again.
I'm requesting, can you conclude your remarks in a couple of minutes?
Absolutely, yeah. So I would talk about like one aspect of what Mr. Ravinder actually talked about, the the challenge between automation as a government, the automation and labor displacement that will happen, right? So AI and automation is predicted to displace about 400 to 800 million, folks in the workforce by 2030, and but the other side of the coin is there's also has the potential to generate billions of new jobs, and the opportunity we have is to understanding the reskilling needs and activation for the community as a whole. And I'd love to actually go a lot more in detail about it. But just think about this. History has shown us before the internet came about, before web came about, it was really hard to imagine a job that says, the job title that says digital marketing or website designer, right? So all those jobs didn't happen. So while we complain about the hundreds of millions of jobs that AI and automation will actually disrupt and displace, the opportunities to identify and prepare in an agile fashion for the billions of jobs that will be created because of this massive fourth industrial revolution. So thank you very much for the time, and love to take questions towards the end.
Chairman, Mr. Ravindra has joined back. You may like to invite him for his remarks. You're on mute, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh Vadunavan. It was an insightful presentation. I'm sure audience will have quite a few questions. We will come back to you definitely. Welcome back, Sri Ravindra. You can continue your remarks, sir.
Tyagarajan, can you tell me where exactly I broke off?
You started talking about the employment versus the new technologies. That is where you were.
So that is something which I believe Ganesh has already spoken about. So that is a challenge which government faces, and we will have to see how reskilling can be done effectively to ensure that those who go out of job have an alternative, and then we have to look at how to create more skills to take benefit of the new emerging technologies. So that is one challenge we face. Then another aspect which I was talking about was that the benefit which comes to us from automation is that availability of manpower is not a constraint for us. So it will add benefit only from the perspective of reduction of cost through scale of operation, and then bringing in quality, which Ganesh also talked about, that once you operate through machines, you are able to get a lot better precision, and you can significantly improve the quality. And then another aspect which we have to look at is regarding data, which we have already started working on. We have a personal data protection bill in Parliament. We are working on non-personal data. Finally, what we want to do is to use this data as a resource, and then to make sure that the benefit of resources which are being generated in India comes to Indians. And then these issues of whether to allow free flow of data and whether to ask for localization of data comes in, where while a large number of international companies want us to allow free flow of data, but we have to see that how our startups which bring new technology and Indian companies can benefit from data which will be generated in India. When we look at the use of net in India, we are still at a very small percentage, and then we have to make sure that the connectivity becomes an issue. And my getting disconnected is one immediately available example here. So we have to improve significantly there, and I believe government is working extensively in that direction also. Slowly bandwidth will become a challenge, and we have to make sure that we keep increasing it relatively to take benefit of all those things. We have to create lots of data centers in India to make sure that we can take benefit of analyzing this data and processing this data in India. So all these benefits will come to India once we are able to tap these things. And right now, technology and things are changing with so much of speed that it's very difficult to know when your policy has become the right, whether you are pursuing the right policy or not. So we are in a situation of flux. It's a very dynamically changing situation. And we have had a large number of consultation with different ministries. We have around 10 different ministries on with whom we are continuously discussing this thing on. And we believe it's a very, very fast changing area. And we have to keep working on our stakeholder consultation and understanding what exactly is required. Make sure that the benefit of this new technology comes to India, Indian companies, and Indian citizens. So we are working on that. That's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Ravinder. Actually, with your colleague Sri Anil Agarwal, we discussed from the industry on the PLI scheme for air conditioners. To tell you the truth, China's market size is around 110 million. India is at around 6.5 million. So we are being asked right from PMO that why you should not export, why you should not become competitive. Technology, R&D is not a problem. We can develop the products. But you have a scale issue, you have the cost of capital issue, and you have to do it faster. And that's where actually what Mr. Ganesh Badravan was alluding to. Actually, without depending on the technology, I don't think we will reach there. It is you talked about the benefits of it. But I do understand the concern. Without causing social distress in terms of loss of jobs, which again he was pointing out that how the new jobs will get created, conventional jobs will go away. But I am certain, at least as far as the air conditioning industry is concerned, if we have to compete with China and become globally competitive, technology is the solution. But there are quite a few things. He himself started talking about it. I'm sure other panelists will highlight that. The one language or the one terminology he didn't touch upon is blockchain. To be honest, I have not understood it. It's loosely used across many places. And a normal business leader like me will never be able to relate to how it will benefit my business or increase the shareholder return. And with that, I would now invite Dr. Saurabh Mishra, CEO of TIO and Manager AI Index, Stanford Institute of Human-Centered AI, HAI, Stanford University, USA. I particularly like this particular terminology, human-centered AI. That's what India is looking forward to use and implement. Over to you, Dr. Mishra.
Thank you, Mr. Thiagarajan. It's a pleasure to be with such an eminent panel here. My talk is focused on AI to guide executive decisions for these multinational companies. And I think there is indeed what I'll take you through, as you will see, this tremendous progress in AI, but there are many challenges as well. And my job here is to ground this conversation in data and evidence to help spur the discussion that we're having today. And the opening remarks is broadly structured in the following manner, where I'll give you a perspective on what does this progress look like, what are the challenges, and conclude with a concrete example about how this could be managed through executive decision-making at these multinational companies. And the challenge there to highlight is that on one hand, you have the operational business folks like yourselves, and on the other, you have the top AI scientist of the world. And there's a huge mismatch between how do we take what progress AI has been able to make, which is in what we call structured decisions. But in reality, what we're dealing with is very unstructured decisions in a complex global environment. And that's a very challenging thing, which we're still cracking as we speak. And to get to this point where everybody might be familiar with something called the ImageNet, which is an object detection task where the machine recognizes what is in that image. And progress in this task has been tremendous, over 90% of accuracy, and continue gaining very, very fast, as you see through this chart. And what is driving this progress in AI is compute capabilities, is the hardware. So, it used to take, within the last 3 years, right? It used to take more than 10,000 minutes to get to this level of accuracy. And now, today, it takes less than 47 seconds. And on the right-hand side, what you see, it used to cost over $1,000 to train a machine to be able to detect these objects in an image. Now it costs substantially less than $7. So this compute capacity, having access to this data, is a big driver for this progress. However, this is a very structured decision-making challenge. And moving on to the economic impacts of AI, one of our recent papers has shown that jobs in the US cities, as they were posted across different districts and cities, lead to higher per capita income growth. So it's good for cities and districts to have higher AI jobs. And because they're creating economic growth through having higher value-added AI jobs, it ends up leading to higher state of human well-being. So this is an important point where having and spurring AI growth is good for economic growth and hence improving the state of well-being. Being said that, there's a different industrial impact that AI has across these sectors. So clearly what you see that, cities that had a higher share of agriculture did not actually witness a faster growth in AI. But what we clearly see with manufacturing, it's a little unclear. But cities in the US that already had higher tech service jobs ended up also creating higher AI jobs. And this is a good story for India because India is a service-led growth model. And the services become central to gaining competitiveness in manufacturing. In interest of time, I will skip some of these slides, but I want to allude to some of the big measurement challenges that we face in measuring progress in AI. And this is a conference workshop we had organized at Stanford, where we had identified these 6 challenges with 100 experts around the world. And I think it's an open question when we talk about what is AI, what's contributing to progress in AI, how do we measure what is happening in AI research and development, how does it impact the labor market, and what are the potential risks of AI through fake news, deep fakes, and so on and so forth, autonomous weapons. These are very difficult questions to answer today because data is very limited about these facets. But for companies and countries, what we see here is an abstraction graph of if I know the natural endowments that as a country or a company that I'm making chemicals or I'm doing finance, and I know that I have capabilities in a certain type of AI, it could be robotics, and you are a sub-Saharan African country who has offshore oil rigs. And I can combine these 2 specializations in robotics and offshore oil rigs to do underwater surveillance for my oil rig. So developing on natural endowments in economic specializations and given you AI specializations, there's tremendous scope to develop future sources of competitive advantage in a thoughtful and strategic manner. And what I would like to conclude with, I will not go more into details here, but the challenge that multinational companies face here is that they're facing globalization, and AI is not designed to capture the complexities of the world and aggregate all this data quite yet to address these unique circumstances that we're dealing with. So this is the kind of work we're dealing now, because you might have, various different sectors of an economy, but aggregating all of this data to eliminate the blind spots and address the concerns that executives are looking to navigate their company in this complex world. So I will stop there to leave time for more question and answering, but I'm happy to go more into details for some of these slides. But what I would do is conclude on this point, which I like a lot, is a famous ice hockey legend, which says that, or you can think of Sachin Tendulkar even, right? He wouldn't go to where the ball is, but estimates where the ball is going to be to actually, make that shot. So much in a similar regard, a lot of the work in research and development that we've been dealing and to help governments, multilaterals, and multinational companies is to aggregate all this external data out in the world, predict things as they're happening in the future, to help provide and empower executives at these multinational companies an edge to see how the world is evolving and how they can navigate their business in this very uncertain world. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much for your time, all, and happy to answer questions and have a discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. It was a very, very insightful and interesting presentation indeed. But one of the questions often comes to my mind, I am sure our audience also will have, is without all this, China became a global powerhouse for manufacturing. And they did accomplish this in quite a few cases without even the penetration of many IT resources. That will be a question which India will be interested in knowing as well. We will come back to you. I will now move on to Dr. Gunjan Bharadwaj, CEO and founder of Innoplexis AG, Germany. At Innoplexis, Dr. Bharadwaj, you are providing cutting-edge data analytics from pipeline to market for biotech, pharma, or the contract research organization. How are you harnessing AI in these fields? And considering the pandemic, what has been your role in pharma industry? Where do you see this AI as a technology leading us into the future? And as you know, that we are a very major player in pharma industry. In fact, in vaccine itself, India will be playing a very large role. Over to you, Dr. Bharadwaj.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here in this event, especially as I myself, as you all can see and hear, come from India. Innoplexis is an AI at scale platform. So in AI, there are two schools of thought. I think Saurabh already mentioned with very cost-effective computational power and a lot of algorithms that have already been there. The only bit that's really moving the cheese in AI is data and structured data, because machines need structured data to do any kind of analytics. As AI started to become more and more interesting, with computational power becoming more and more cost effective, many startups, many companies started tackling problems with limited scope. So also in life sciences, for instance, somebody would say, let's find the best small molecules for any disease. Some companies would pick up one specific disease, say AML, Parkinson's, collect all the data related to that specific disease, and try to find a silver bullet. This doesn't help because biology, as many other systems, is a complex system. So everything is connected. There are moving parts. So you can't really silo a disease, put all of this data related to that disease in a graph, do some analytics, and hope to find an answer. You need to map all the data that's available, that's relevant. And you need to build a layer of semantic intelligence in that AI to make sense of all of this data, to bring all of this data in a context. Every domain has its own language. Medicine doesn't speak English, French, or German. In Germany, the physicians, people who work in pharma life sciences, they speak a language of this domain. Ditto is true for financial services or manufacturing, etc. So you need a sense of a layer of semantic intelligence to make that sense. And that's what we have done. We basically have, if you may say so, a vertical Google, a vertical extraction architecture that leverages AI to scan everything that's relevant to life sciences, crawl at scale. We can crawl 10 billion URLs a day, extract structured information from unstructured text, etc., and push this into a large brain, an AI that can make sense of all the information that's out there relevant to life sciences, to drug discovery and development. And in addition to that, for proprietary data, and you mentioned, Mr. Tyagarajan, blockchain. It's kind of a book wherein a copy of that book is available with all the participants. And if anybody makes a change, everybody else is notified. So the US and some countries in Asia have been talking about data pools. For AI, you need data pools, which is, I say, a spray and pray approach. In medicine, if you want to train a model for pancreatic cancer, you don't need data on COVID. There is no specificity. With blockchain, you have the ability, and that's what we leverage, to publish the information about this proprietary data, protocols of an experiment, etc., on a public blockchain, and then incentivize a patient who can provide his or her data to train your model, a scientist who has done experiments specific to a problem you want to solve. In COVID-19 situation, this pandemic, we worked with the government of Hesse in Germany to develop novel molecules that might be efficacious, not just for the current strains of SARS-CoV-2, but also future coronaviruses. Because I don't believe the problem would stop now. It will continue. Taking this analogy to manufacturing, I think there is a fundamental transformation going to happen in manufacturing. And that transformation is less about predictive maintenance, efficiency gains, and so on, and that the market would be $16 billion in 2026, etc., etc. It's more about the change from a CapEx-driven model to an OpEx-driven model. We are moving towards an era of everything as a service. And that plays in India's favor. You won't have big machines that companies would buy, incur a heavy capex, have them captive, and run them at suboptimal utilization. You would have cloud-based everything as a service, so as to say, an Airbnb of heavy equipments, wherein everybody in a very flexible way can tap that service and pay for that service as and when they require. And there, India has all the strengths. And there is one thing that India has to do. I mean, first, the labor force, highly educated, understanding English, super skilled. B, heavy cost of capital. So, that's a problem, but that becomes an opportunity for India in an everything as a service paradigm. What India needs to do is do two things. One, enable standards for various equipment providers to share data seamlessly. Because that's where Indian companies, Indian startups can come in and be these Airbnbs for manufacturing. And B, embrace blockchain. Blockchain has been, unfortunately, because of cryptos, in the most underrated, yet the most important technology that in conjunction with AI can really be transformational. Why should a small factory in Rajasthan, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, why shouldn't they be incentivized for the data they share with somebody up there who could use that data to do predictive maintenance, to think of what parts, predicting failures, optimizing and predicting, of course, how the market would evolve, etc., anticipating demands. All of that could be done, but not in a way, it's like in Germany, there has been a debate. All patients should share their data with the state because state subsidizes health. I believe data is the fundamental right of every human being, every legal entity, be it a company and organization. And leveraging blockchain, we can create a marketplace for all of these entities to share data equitably without calling for these pray and pray data pools. And once we create these marketplaces with standards wherein you could, create an API, plug in, dock in your data into that marketplace, we would usher even faster into this everything as a service era. And that's where India would truly become the manufacturing hub of the world. We don't need high capex, high cost of capital plays. That's not our strength. Our strength would be everything as a service, and that's where manufacturing is going to get. Thank you.
Chairman, kindly unmute. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bharadwaj. Very, very passionate lecture on this subject. You are actually giving the solution for this high cost of capital and the OPEX model, how India can embrace. The data sharing is something still, it is a frightening subject for many stakeholders, and I think we have a lot of work to do and confidence building in this respect. I move on to Mr. Rainer Brehm, Global CEO, Siemens Factory Automation, Germany. Sir, actually, I have the privilege of working with Mr. Sunil Mathur. He is the chairman for Western region. I am the deputy chairman this year, and he heads the Smart Manufacturing Council for CII, of which I am a member. And I know the phenomenal work Siemens is doing on this subject. We would like to hear from you. How do you define the future of manufacturing and the transformation process that makes sense for us? And Siemens itself is a huge investor in this country with more than a dozen manufacturing units across. And what is the role of a big organization like yours in making a trustworthy and sustainable future of manufacturing? We would like to also know the role of AI in building the future of manufacturing. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation to this great panel. Yeah, maybe building on what my other colleagues here said, well, I also think
Video.
Siemens, ingenuity for life.
Please go ahead, Mr. Rayner, with your presentation.
I was told the video is running, so okay. Then I continue on the topic. Is the video still running or not?
It is not running.
Okay.
It's finished.
It's finished. Okay. Then we start with then put the slides in. So to continue on that, so there's a big market demand, and the market demand is, we said time to market is very important. We had a discussion on GM producing cars and then producing ventilators. So there's a very instant delivery necessary in a very short time to market. The market is changing rapidly. Now with social media and influencers, suddenly a certain product gets a hype and you need to very fast changing your manufacturing to deliver that good. Then you go away from products more to solutions. Currently the visibility is very limited and it's maybe only on a machine. You have the OEE of a machine or a line or a plant, but not really across the value chain. You need to get there. There's a big tendency from mass production, like Ford in the US, they had your line and you produce the same car as long as it's black and the same model, to more and more personalized aspects, to really centric to a human being or to a certain interest group. And you also go away from error prone to really trying to reach zero defects. So these are market trends which are there, and the question is how you go there. If you look at automation today, you're reaching basically the level of 2019. If you really want to go beyond, then you need to apply now different technologies. And the one topic is it's the stack. You need to go away only from a field level and control level. You need to go in the cloud for certain aspects, for aspect of transparency, for aspect of unlimited computing power and storage power to train neural networks. And you need to be on the edge level because a lot of manufacturing is done for sure locally at the machine. You cannot manufacture virtually. Even if you do it as a service, it's done at the machine. And then a lot of aspects, you don't want to have the machine maybe always connected to a cloud. Then you have edge devices, and edge devices are, for example, very, very valuable for the inference of AI. So modules might be trained in the cloud, but then be deployed on edge devices in order to infer in real time close to the machine in order to influence the process. And if you want to do that and want to do that in India, you need to be very robust. Very robust under the aspect of, industrialized, hardened, robust under the aspect easy to use. And I think the topic of augmentation of the technology for the user is very important. But it's also important to be long time available. If you look today at machines, at plants, we talk about a lifetime of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And especially in India, normally a machine, if it fails, it's going to be fixed and it's going to be retrofitted. So it's going to be, the long lifetime is extended. If you see the lifetime of IT technology, there is after half a year, it could be already old-fashioned. So how we connect those worlds of a machine with a very long lifetime versus IT technology with its very short lifetime. So AI plays a major role, but we need to make it capable to run really with unskilled labor, to run very reliable over a long time. I give you some examples when we talk about AI in manufacturing, and some of them has been alluded on. We see for sure the topic of anomaly detection. We see the topic of root cause analysis. Currently, a lot of systems have errors, and you don't really know where the error comes from. You only see the symptom, but not really the root cause. Smart assistant, very important. We had this presentation about human-centric AI. So if the machine realizes the capability level of the operator, it could maybe adapt to the skill level. Or train the operator how to do it better. You can move into new ways of quality inspection, of predictive maintenance. You can do automatic sorting, which is a very hard thing currently, which is normally done with a lot of errors. Visual inspection is a very important topic. Process improvements. A lot of topics you cannot improve by a linear formula. because the formula is unknown. You need to use neural networks in order to do really process improvement. Diagnostic via different signals. It could be vision, it could be audio, it could be different time series data. And then the last topic I have on that slide is the topic of quality prediction. And I give you one example, which is I can tell about because we did it by ourselves in the factory. We also discuss about using in India. We did it now in Hamburg in Germany. So we're producing millions of PCBs every year. And this is a standard PCB line where you have pick and place machines, we have the oven, the soldering, everything is done in this line. So at our case, where we produce the products, this is the automation products, in the past we X-rayed every PCB because we need to ensure 100% quality. So the X-ray, for example, in that line was a bottleneck. So you can do two things. You can say, okay, if it's a bottleneck, I buy additional X-ray machine, and then the bottleneck is not the X-ray machine anymore, and you can increase the speed of the production line. Or you ask yourself, well, do I really need to X-ray all the PCBs? In this case, what we did is we collecting from 20,000, collecting in real time 20,000 process parameter of this line, put it into a neural network. That neural network is executed on the edge and is deciding in a very fast speed the probability of that PCB has a problem or not. And in 30% of the cases already, we can identify that there's a very, 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 very high probability that there is no problem. So in this case, the X-ray will not, the PCB will not go to the X-ray, but if it bypasses the X-ray and goes directly to assembly. What is the consequence? We saved a complete X-ray machine because we have 30% fewer X-ray cases. With that, we guarantee 100% quality rate. And with that, we saved the investment of an X-ray machine of, in this case, €500,000. So you see here a very concrete case where you apply AI directly on the shop level, doing the AI interference with real-time data and do real-time decision-making directly on the line. And this is saving money in this case. If you look then beyond that, and this is where I started my presentation, say, hey, where could AI maybe also help on certain higher flexibility on manufacturing when we talk about individualized products? To how you automate them? Because currently you get mass products, you can automate them. The question is on individualized products, when they're different, how you automate them. And there you need more flexibility and more autonomy in the system. And I give you an example on that. So what we do there is we are having, for example, an AI module which we put directly to the PLC, the programmable logical controller, which is normally automating all the machines. Also, all the machines in India are normally automated with a PLC. And we put AI directly in the automation. And with that, and this is a real product, it's not kind of a PowerPoint slide, we sell that product. You put a neural network on there, and with that you can do a higher flexibility because the machine directly realizes what they can do, gives a control to the PLC, and they operate differently. And what we do here for autonomy, for example, is we could make machines talk to each other. So you go away from a rule-based automation where you tell exactly what to do to a goal-based automation. So you tell the machine what you want as an output. And the machine itself is creating somehow the program, leveraging AI technology, and then could communicate also to other machines. The human always has control of that, what is done, and can supervise it, but you get a higher flexibility, and in the future, the machine going to be not this line of Henry Ford anymore. It's going to be more flexible machines, which are more software-defined than mechanical defined. And I think that's a big opportunity for India. We have thousands of software developed in India with a very high quality, and if it more goes to software-defined, I think there's a very big chance for India as well to get flexibility into plants, into production lines, of getting then really products done which an individual person wants to have. So that is where I believe we go more into autonomous system enabling much higher flexibility. So far, my outlook where we believe the future of manufacturing will be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That way, I know a lot of good work Siemens is doing in India. I mentioned to you that I'm closely involved, and I'll begin with one question from you. Then we move on to others. We have seen in robots itself or cobots, given the maturity level of this particular part in our Industry 4.0 where India is in, and the affordability issues, and I mentioned that it is an economy driven by MSMEs, reconditioned machines are sought after. So do you think India should have a policy, actually Sri Ravinder is here, that how to encourage this reconditioned machines market? Do you have a view on that?
And I believe that India has a very good chance on that because, as already was mentioned, you have a lot of those capabilities. And when we have seen, I like the chart on what is the potential of AI, what $1 trillion is a market there. And I think India has both. They could contribute, but also they can consume. And what I mean, if you really want to reach that market potential, you need so many AI specialists in the world to do this, which are not there. They are not there. So India could contribute of really applying with AI specialists to build systems, but build systems that they can be used and leveraged by lower skilled people. So don't invest in making the best AI algorithms. This others could do. There are your Google, Amazons, Alibaba, whatever in the world, they can do that. But I think the beauty is, could you invest into making our AI available, make it as easy to use to the standard small, medium enterprises, to people which haven't the high degree of education. And with that, you really can leverage the beauty and the power of AI with that market growth. But this translation of very complex algorithms into daily use business, I think that's a big opportunity for India.
Thank you, sir. Sri Ravinder, do you have any questions to any of the panelists, sir?
I believe this is a learning opportunity for me, and I am trying to grab as much as possible from what they are saying, and it has been very good to learn from them and understand new aspects which are coming. I believe it will be significantly useful for me in my work, especially with respect to e-commerce, where data we believe is a very significant input in policy making. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you think there will be a dedicated policy for AI Government of India will come out with?
I believe Niti Aayog has put out a paper on this, and they are working on this. And Niti Aayog and MeitY have been given mandate to come out with a policy on this aspect. So it's high on priority in the government.
And you do not see any problem in terms of our data center capacities?
No, certainly. See, if you will see right now, data is significantly concentrated at a few locations, and that is a challenge which we are trying to make. And MeitY has been working on a special policy to see how data centers can be promoted in India, and that is one area where we have to work. And availability of data itself might be a significant contributor to that. So that's why we are saying we are still grappling with the issues to allow data to flow out or to make it stay in India, and that is a very contentious issue, and people have divergent views on this, and we have to see exactly what should be the right policy.
I am sure you will make it happen, sir. Mr. Ganesh Padmanabhan, do you think that India will get there in a couple of years in terms of setting right basic infrastructure with regard to data?
No, it's a good question. It's a very loaded question, I would say, the whole topic of data, right? There is, AI in general, we're still, I would say, very early in the life cycle of, seeing the full potential, right? So there's a lot more ways to go. And I think from a, broader governance and getting ready perspective, it's important to be more prepared than planned. And what I mean by that is actually making sure that take an agile mindset on taking input as it comes and adopting the right policies and structures to support the right forms of growth. Now, to your point specifically on data, there's a couple of things, and Dr. Bharadwaj touched on a few things, which is data should be an inalienable right and should be treated as property, the individuals, organizations, and stuff. And I think it is, honestly, with digitization everywhere, it is the ultimate opportunity equalizer for everybody, right? The kid out in the little boy, the teenager who has no traditional job prospects, mostly has a cell phone, and there is data being generated. So creating the right ecosystem for them to participate in the data economy, it should be a fundamental tenet. Now, that aside, right, if you look at more structural, foundational, fundamental issues, the notion of data sharing, the free flow of data, I think it starts from a, there's a broad spectrum of things we should be thinking about. To your point, can we get there in the next 2 years? Can India get there? Absolutely. I think there's a it's an aggressive goal, but should we get there? But there are basic things you can put in place. Number one, you can actually really look at the disparity between the individuals and the big, more big organizations who are, the individuals generate data, but the economic opportunity is realized by larger organizations, right? If you can change that dynamic a little bit through governance, through policies, ensuring, like, and it's a controversial topic about, like, the classic GDPR examples. How do you ensure that individual privacy and individual protection is actually built in through a governance thing? So that's a structural issue, will help a lot. Now, the second part is what Dr. Bharadwaj talked about is, and then you create incentive structures for that data to be shared willingly across parties. And that could be done through technologies like blockchain, which, I was way bullish on it earlier than I am right now. But I think there is a lot of opportunity there if you create the right incentive structures to go do it. But I think the more immediate need is, what Ravinder actually talked about, is the need to improve connectivity, right? The whole aspect that you now have the broadband, the bandwidth issues, the ensuring that people have continued connections. I think that, as a tactical priority, will lay the foundation. So cloud computing, adoption of cloud computing across enterprises. And we are seeing that, in our commercial at Beyond Minds, when we work with large and small corporations and entities within India, we're seeing everybody. And COVID was the ultimate digital transformation accelerator, right? So that is happening. But ensuring and driving connectivity and the ability for every individual, every state, every government, every taluk and jillas to actually participate in the data economy will be the first step. And from there, you got to then build out saying, how do you protect the both yin and yang of the coins, right? So which is, how do you protect the privacy and individual rights around data for individuals and corporations, and then ensure there's no malpractice and stuff, and then create the incentive structure to go make sure that you're driving more sharing of the data across parties to generate combined value. So lots of loaded thoughts in there, but that's my view.
Wonderful. It provided a lot of clarity. I can't ask this question, but still I am indulging in that. Do you think elections can be won or lost through AI?
Well, controversial question. Absolutely. I think, look, here's the view, the two sides of AI, and I'll take a step back and I'll talk about this. The positive side being, everybody knows this, productivity improvements, small joys that we get, we're able to, in a convenience, the ability to actually participate and, develop and evolve the the economy and the country as a whole, right? But the other side of this that we don't really talk about a lot is, things like your, Google, or even if you're on Facebook, for example, just to take one company as an example, as an application, Facebook and Google probably knows more about what you are going to do than what you think you know, right? So there is an attention and intent hacking that is happening, and that is done because it's not human beings watching your breadcrumbs and what you're doing online across multiple slides, right? If you search for shoes on Amazon.co.in, the next time you show up in Facebook, you're going to start seeing those little ads for shoes, and it's a real problem, right? I think it's not a problem, but that's the promise of the always on omni-channel digital thing. But the flip side of this is the aspect that I can use that data to tell you what to think and how to act based on that time. And then, we saw the Cambridge Analytica, event in the 2016 elections in the US. There is definitely a lot of potential for those things to happen. But, end of the day, we all know democracy wins, at the end of the day. And, it's raising the awareness of this issue, the other side of the issue. If you haven't watched that documentary called the Social Dilemma on Netflix, I encourage everybody to watch it just to be aware of the challenges of it. I'm also a technology optimist personally, so I think it's like everything in life. Every positive side of the things has the negative side of the coins, two sides of the same coin. And that's where I believe, the role of government, and I'm a huge believer in that role of regulation, to actually be playing that role of being an equalizer to make sure the yin and yang of this particular, the impact of disruptive technologies like AI is ensured and maintained.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed. Dr. Mishra, India is an agricultural economy. You know that. And how do you think this will help our farmers? And what kind of time frame change management that will be needed?
That's a very important question for India. Listen, as an economist hat, I've been, trying to propagate to my ex-institutions, the World Bank and IMF, that there's been a bias in the world of economics of following the growth pattern of China's manufacturing-led growth. When in reality, right, India's IT service-led growth has propelled India growth for the last 2 decades. And as all our panelists pointed out, right, the services are embedded in manufacturing process automation. And building on that same capability that India has is actually, India is carving a new generation of growth models of countries to follow. So to that effect, leveraging efficiency gains and productivity in agriculture using AI-based services across sectors is what India should be focusing on. And to that effect, I think there are a lot of things with AI that have been cracked already in robotic process automation and so forth. But I think the worry here is that all of these solutions are deadly focused on human resources, sales, marketing, but we're forgetting people like yourself, sir, right, who are the key decision makers, and how you're making complex decisions in an evolving world. So what is the practicality, right, of leveraging AI-based technology and tools to help you make more practical decisions to navigate this complex world? So I think that's an important take-home message, where India to keep building on its IT-based service revolution, because that is the future of manufacturing. And let's not forget, I mean, there is a lot of examples on credit card fraud and various other things. But let's not forget, at the heart of your community right now, which are executives, how are they going to practically leverage AI to help them make better decisions?
Thank you. That's indeed very insightful. I don't, I'm sharing I'm being candid. We are on a treadmill in India. The quarterly pressures, annual pressures And in the process, I'm guilty of myself that whether you pay attention for a period of 1.5 years, 2 years, that is the time frame, maximum 3 years. But I suppose initiatives such as these should be a 5-year roadmap in a country like ours. That's where I am. And Mr. Braham, do you see any opportunities for India to enhance? First of all, one issue we have is the industry academia collaboration itself. We may be in nascent stages. There may be elite institutes like IIT has progressed much faster, but many of the engineering colleges or the technical institutions may not be importing this at all. Or the IITs for the frontline shop floor workers, ITIs, they may be far behind. Do you have any suggestions to the government or the CII in this respect?
Yeah, I mean, coming back to one point that you have thought you need data center. I haven't seen any AI use case so far which failed because there was not enough storage or computing capacity. None at all. This is not the bottleneck, at least not in manufacturing. It might be somewhere else, but not in manufacturing. I think what is very important and what's very rare is getting the right data. And to get the right data, you need to put the data into context. And to put the data into context, you need to have domain knowledge. And if you look now at this university, like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, machine building, they have the domain knowledge. And that's the asset. And the question is now, because if you collect data, you can collect apples and pears and put them into an AI network, the outcome will be grab. And the question is how you standardize, how you put the domain knowledge into the data, getting also the rare data, because normal AI, to find pictures of dogs and cats and bicycles is easy, we have them. To find really data on the process and identify where you can, in this process, see whether it's good or not good, how to predict it. That domain knowledge is the gold nugget. And I think the universities should very much working especially on that, how to translate the domain knowledge into content-rich data, which then can be applied to AI. And I think there I would very much invest. And a second topic, which is also important, is these data are rare. For example, false data. Then the question is, how could you train networks with only a few shots? Because you don't have so many data. This is also an area which is very, very important to really make AI happen. Because if an error happens only once a year in a very high automated factory, you need wait a half a year to get one sample. So the question is how you can really enrich it, simulate it, and getting with a few shots a very good example. And that is where I would focus also in academia.
Thank you, sir. Last week, CII organized the National Manufacturing Summit. One of the issues for many, many years we have grappled with is the gender diversity in manufacturing. It's a male-dominated industry across many levels. But one of the fallouts of Industry 4.0 or automation, AI, is that we are able to attract, induct, and productively employ many female managers, executive workers. So this is one of the social benefits AI or the digital brings in for India. We have a huge workforce in female gender. So that is something which you may want to take note of. I think we have come to the end of the sessions, so I will go around again. Sri Ravinder, one final thought from you for our audience.
See, when we talk about data and we talk about equal opportunity across things, what we have to keep in mind is that the starters have an advantage. There are large corps have a significant amount of data collected. So regulation, as Ganesh also said, becomes a very important aspect where we have to make sure that there is fair competition, and the government is looking at various options that are available with it, and we will be finally reaching on a decision that what exactly is to be done, but that is a big challenge, and we have to make sure that Indian startups which actually bring out the new technology are benefited from the regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ganesh Vadunathan? You are muted, I think.
I'm back on. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Mr. Ravinder. I think, Sri Ravinder, thanks for that insight. And I do believe that, I mean, India, I think, has an amazing opportunity in front of us. I think there is the simplest way, and Saurabh mentioned this in his session too, it is to look at what uniquely has worked historically very well for India. Looking at the labor pool as a huge advantage, the higher educational standards an advantage, the IT services industry as an advantage, and try to shape that as a way to, get that leg up in, a strategic initiative like AI in manufacturing. I think the one last thing I would leave you with. So there was a topic that I thought we'll touch upon, which is the collaboration between the industry and academia for this particular thing. And I think there is just as a personal experience, I wish more organizations, more corporations do what Wipro and Infosys did when I was graduating out of college in India in early 2000s, which is, create a skill academy where you take really educated individuals and then train them on the modern workforce specific skill sets, and then make them productive individuals. And they, and not only did they actually generate value for them, but those individuals went out to become entrepreneurs and other companies, set up different businesses and help particular with the overall economy. So I think there is an opportunity like that for the industrial sector to make that more sexy again, to make it more appealing for corporations to do that and try to take in that the talent from incoming colleges. Slightly, I think so. And the government has a role to play in incentivizing that. And I think the last thing I know you're thinking about it, but the entrepreneurial ecosystem, trying to actually do more for creating value creation opportunities across. And I think, it's amazing. A lot of my friends who I grew up with, they're all entrepreneurs in India, and it's amazing to see the ecosystem thrive, but continuing to invest in that and driving focus, sector focus, technology focus to drive that and incentivizing that more versus others, I think will go a long way too. So thank you for the opportunity, and it was great learning from everybody.
Thank you. Dr. Mishra, your final words?
Famous last words. Well, I have 4 very simple points, I think, as concluding. To be original, leverage India's service-led growth to transform manufacturing. Point 2, double down on subsidizing compute capabilities, because compute is going to drive progress in AI. Point 3, triple down on private investment in AI. As Ganesh mentioned, India actually shows up on top of female AI skill penetration. The skill endowment is there, higher than even the US as we see, but the investment ecosystem is missing. And 4 is not for your stakeholders at CII, the CFOs, the CEOs, the board directors. Let's not forget their concern is strategic resource allocation. So let's find a way for AI to help them on external risk management. That's it. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity and learning, everyone.
Wonderfully summed up. Dr. Bharadwaj, whether it is biotech, pharma, vaccines, your insights were extremely useful. Your final thoughts on this?
Chairman, Dr. Bharadwaj got dropped out because of issue in the network.
Fair enough. Mr. Bayam.
Yeah, so as said, I think AI, to apply AI, you need domain knowledge, and therefore you need to break the silos between machine builder, academia, end customers, operators, and also IT players. Bring them together and bring all this domain together in order to leverage AI. I strongly believe that leveraging this, you need to make AI very easy, especially for small, mid-sized companies, because else they cannot use it. To really get the full benefit of that, you need to have a broad basis. So make it easy, make it robust, And I think then really AI is this technology to go beyond Industry 4.0.
Thank you very much. Panelists, it was such a pleasure to interact with you, and our membership across the country would have immensely benefited. You were pragmatic in sharing your views. At the same time, I think you made it simple, and the passion with which you delivered your remarks were very, very interesting. Thank you very much. And CII and its members, including CEOs, CFOs across the country, will be interested in engaging with you at some point of time. Thank you for your time. We thank you, audience, for your participation. We have come to the close of the session. CII Secretariat, do you have any announcement to make? Thank you very much. All the best to you. Good night.